thumbs up if you're back, because I know we can't do that. Since we took an hour and a half off, let's just let's roll call again. Kelly is coming back, but she's coming back a little bit later than the rest of us. Maria, Avery, are you back?
I am here.
Great. And then Jeanette Bear, I think I just saw you, didn't you?
I'm here.
You're here. Denise Percy?
I'm here.
Great. Christopher Kaufman Ilstrup? Maybe Christopher's not back yet. Let's see. Andy Polovos?
Andy K is here.
Did I say your last name correctly?
Yes, totally good.
Oh, good. Maybe that's why I've been saying Andy K out of fear of massacring your name.
I'm totally indifferent to how people pronounce it. So.
Okay. Karen McCullough?
I am here.
Great. Susan O'Connell?
I'm here.
Super. And then Wendy Sharkey?
I'm here.
Great. Almost everybody's back. Hopefully we'll see Christopher soon. And Kelly had let me know she needs to be a little bit late returning this afternoon. And I'm just going to quickly read who else is here in attendance. It looks to be members of the Vermont Department of Library staff. So I see Karen Gravlin, Lauren Kelly, who is, thank you, Lauren, still doing our minutes this afternoon. Tom McMurdo, Josh Muse, Tanya Riles, Jeanette Schaefer, and April Shaw. I think that is who is here. Okay, so let's pick up. It is 1:35 and we're reconvening after our recess. And we are on agenda item 11, a discussion of the working group related to technology. And this one's a little bit more recent. We had the oral, here's Christopher now. We had the oral testimony on technology on May 20th. So let's look at those same questions that we considered for the other topics, beginning with what are the key takeaways that you had after hearing the oral and written testimony, and you can include quotations and examples and stories that stood out as well.
I'll start and just say I think that this is really tightly connected to the facilities conversation, and it maybe should be framed somehow in that way in the final report. I don't have much more to say about that, but I think facilities is more than just a building, and infrastructure of our communities includes the broadband accessibility. Sorry, I was a few minutes late.
That's okay. We were just getting started when you showed up. It's interesting. I feel like technology is closely linked with facilities, but it's also closely linked with collections. Like some of what we heard about on the topic of technology seemed like it was in the realm of the collections discussion too. Wendy?
Well, I have to say it's also related to the staffing as well, because we have the issue of, first of all, keeping everything up to date. We have to keep any machines that we do have up to date, because otherwise you get messages that say your software is about to expire, etc., etc. So keeping up to date, but that involves staff time, teaching patrons how to use the equipment and keeping them up to date takes staff time. And time is money is, you know, and we're back to the time and money sort of idea as well. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I know is on everyone's mind is the libraries that do have Fibre Connect. The system is aging and it's failing bit by bit. And so libraries know that they need to get a replacement in for that. The only other things I sort of took away were live tech help, a need for that, and training. Those were the main, my
Yeah.
bullet points.
Thank you. One of the very first things we heard on the topic of technology was during the public comment section. And Howard Burrows from Brooks Memorial Library, a trustee there, he brought up something that's important around information literacy, that we don't just need the technology, we need information literacy. So I think that that's something that is sort of at every different level, we see that in terms of what the public needs support with, and then also what staff need training and continuing education around. And I'm seeing a note here that answers the question about the automated. I had highlighted it even. ILS 25 not automated. So when we met, that was the answer that day from Josh's PowerPoint. Are there other folks who have recollections about what you heard and what your takeaways were on the topic of technology? Karen.
So I just wanted to say that the school librarian's testimony for that meeting starts with a section called Common Themes, where we tried to pull apart the things that lots of school librarians mentioned. And as was mentioned before, it's sometimes hard to pick technology or any of these topics apart. So technology, a lot of school librarians talked about better access to resources supported by the state. So talking about Vermont Online Libraries being a really good resource, but hoping that we could think about adding some more elementary friendly products or more higher level high school products to that package would be good. But that sort of feels like a collections issue. I mean, the fact that they're delivered using a technology device does not really make them a technology. And lots of concern about equity. So equity among school districts. Many librarians are asked to also be the tech support people for their district or school. And so thinking about how to create better equity for device access, for tech support staffing and access, for broadband availability, for budgets, technology support, training, and professional development. And even like inside districts, sometimes there's really uneven technology deployment school to school. So, you know, you might have a district where there's one elementary school that has a lot of technology and another one that doesn't have any, even inside the same district.
Why is that? Is that a choice locally, or is it?
It's often a local choice based on like budgeting constraints and who controls the budget. So some districts have a centralized technology person who controls the budget for the whole district. And some districts, each school principal sort of controls that part of the budget. And so then you see like principal or school priorities come out. So there's a limited amount of money and we have to decide where to put it. And so maybe we didn't buy any technology this year or something like that. So it's always like a local decision that basically tracks back to not enough money, a theme that we're noticing. But so that's sort of the big takeaways from the school librarians, and those are set off at the top of the written testimony that was provided that day.
Thank you. Susan.
So the things that stuck out for me from my notes are from Bree Drappa, that there's a need for better guidance on tech purchases. I'm not sure how we would do that, but it's an interesting thing to think about whether that could be a problem that could be solved. This is from Karen. One school library system, which I think goes back to that whole idea of one state ILS system and sharing digital resources. Jasmine West talked about technology standards, and I have kind of stuck on the side here a note that says Maine State Library. I don't remember if that's because the Maine State Library has good tech standards, but clearly I meant to follow up on that and didn't.
I think that was, we were talking about their databases at one point that Maine had. I remember hearing in this meeting about Maine's databases.
Okay. I have at the end things to be thinking about is resource sharing benchmark with other states. So that might have tied back into that as well. Because I know Maine is definitely a place to look in terms of having a very rural population that's also doing a fair amount with their library services.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the pieces. I think that probably falls under recommendations more than takeaways, but those are my takeaway pieces.
Great, thank you. I remember people talking about consortial pricing as well, like the idea of rates being negotiated that libraries could kind of buy into if they were interested. That was something that people wanted us to explore. And Susan, I have a highlighted note here. What is Maine up to? Question mark.
We're on the same page there.
Yeah. Kate Owen of Thetford Academy talked about Maine's online resources, and I wrote that highlighted note right after that. And I have a sticky note. Sometimes I look at my notes and I think, who took these? Standards, control, access, trust. It's fascinating.
That was from Jasmine.
Was that from Jasmine?
Yeah, those 4 pieces.
I thought they were very important, so I put it on a sticky note.
Me too.
The training piece definitely seems important. And then I feel like throughout the notes, I keep seeing this, trying to figure out what is being offered by other states. A little bit of an update on that. Some of what's being offered right now by other states has been really where they funneled a lot of their ARPA dollars. And I have a feeling some of the states that we might be admiring might not be continuing with all of those resources. So we might want to, we have to bear that in mind, that some of what we're seeing is the result of that flooded database environment, because when everybody was working from home, people used the ARPA funding for limited time contracts, and some of the other state librarians that I've been speaking with have said that they're not going to continue at that robust level in all of the states. So if we do a survey, one thing we might be able to do, not a survey that we paid $12,000 for, but if we wanted to look into technology and what other states are doing, one thing we could do is have some members of the working group take on the task of looking online and seeing what other state libraries have, and then reaching out to them and seeing, are they going to continue that? And that could be a way that we could kind of spread the work out a little bit. We could develop a set of questions that folks then ask and gather information and bring back to the group. Jeanette? Jeanette, your hand is up, but I don't hear you.
Sorry. I just wanted to echo the need for the training to go along with the technology. That with all the ARPA money that's been available in the last couple years to buy technology, how much of it is sitting unused because there's nobody that really knows how to operate it. And whether we're talking about a 3D printer or an owl or a circuit machine or whatever, if you don't have the resources to figure out how to use it, the training, the person to help with that, it's just going to sit in the back room and not get used.
Yeah, it's kind of a depressing thought. I hope that's not what's happening.
Sorry.
Uh, Andy.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to people's emphasis on the importance of broadband access and Wi-Fi and pandemic era adaptability around Wi-Fi, you know, expanding access, and then that these services seem to still continue to be used. One comment I appreciated a lot was from the Ilsley, where she stated that I don't know what it was most or not, but many people who are using Wi-Fi at the library have it at home, have internet access at home, have broadband at home. They're using the library as an alternative workspace, which I think it's something that's just important to acknowledge. You know, that these services aren't just being directed to people who can't afford them or don't have them at home, although that's a necessary backstop, but that they're used by a wide spectrum of people who are also increasingly using the library in different ways. And then just second, that people want Josh to go to their libraries and tell them how to do things.
They just want like 100 Joshes. Sometimes the rest of us at the department feel a little sad that they just want Josh. Like, what about us? Poor Josh.
I've been there, done
Josh
that.
just wrote, and for those of you who can't see the chat, and for the record, Josh just wrote in the chat, that sounds horrifying.
The Josh clones? Is it?
The Josh clones. April has now written in the chat that we need Team Josh shirts. Oh my goodness. This is why we turn off the chat, you guys. Yeah, I think that this is sort of the perpetual issue with technology, is that it doesn't stand still long enough for us to get trained on it. So it's just it's a constantly moving target. It's such a difficult thing to predict. And really what we can be trained on is to be adaptable and flexible and kind of learn to sort of embrace the weird discovery period with new technology. It can be just, by the time you make a guide to how to do something, the platform has changed, is kind of what I'm always noticing in technology and libraries. Wendy?
Well, I will speak, but I think there's a Jay that had their hands up before me. It kind of occurred to me that there is a lot of knowledge out there on technology out and about in library land. And many years ago, there was a technology unconference in Vermont. And that was both scary and informative as far as I was concerned. And I did find that very useful. But that was a great collaboration of lots of intelligent people that have figured out things, sharing the knowledge.
Was that a library thing, or was that a broader?
I believe it, yes, it was. No, it was a library thing. I think it was you know, it was just done by the state. Um,
So who was next? Was it Jeanette?
Sorry, don't mean to have my hand up.
Okay. Andy.
I mean, just building off something that you said earlier around the rapidity of change in technology. I mean, another factor is security and software patches, software updates, systemic stuff, you know, and that's pretty specialized knowledge, you know, and we rely on an outside IT company to supply that, you know, to keep our firewall updated and all that other stuff. So it's not just learning about how to run the technology, but it's the specificity and the esoteric nature of some of it, and that not every town has an IT support that can provide those services to a library.
Yeah, and I think that something that's tricky in that element, and we didn't hear too much about it in the testimony, but if you have 185 different libraries and each of them has their own independent system, they're all sort of vulnerable in different ways to various attacks and things that could happen on a library, where it seems like libraries have quite a lot of personal identifying information with people's addresses and their birth dates, and it seems like everyone sort of does it on their own. I remember advocating for the driver's license to be checked but not entered in the ILS in San Francisco, because it felt like if the library's hacked, they have quite a lot of information about you already. And why did we need to save that? So I'm kind of curious, just among those here, like, how do you see vulnerabilities in libraries around security that it would be important for the working group to look into more and make a recommendation about? I mean, we don't want to like put up a sign like we're vulnerable, come attack us, but
I do know that different libraries handle their security in different ways. That some have opted to purchase software and others have opted to download free software that shouldn't be downloaded to a business. So I do realize that it's handled in different ways by different libraries. But whether that's, I mean, again, it comes down to money. If you purchase the full software, then you're going to have to pay for it. If you download a free version, then you don't. One will leave you more vulnerable than another.
yeah. Susan?
I was just going to say that it seems telling that it didn't come up in any of the discussions, and that probably is a fairly good indication about how far our thinking has gone in terms of cybersecurity, which is not very far at all.
Yeah. Andy?
Yeah, just you know, same topic, but the idea that as the notion of potentially redeveloping new standards for libraries comes up, that a cybersecurity component should probably be part of it.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about this for a second. So when we're talking about the broadband build out at the state level, I'm trying to get into those conversations and position libraries to potentially be a source of training and information for the public, that we would get resources to like build up our skills so that then we can assist people even more than we do now when they come to the library in accessing information and digital literacy in the library. And that's like a pretty normal thing for a state library to be trying to do right now, right? Because there's some money associated with the training components of the broadband build out. And then there's that, which is like, we could be in the lead, but then there's the reality that like cybersecurity didn't even come up. So it's sort of, there's this potential gulf there for some of, we didn't ask people about cybersecurity, to be fair. Like the testimony is kind of whatever people are thinking about the most, and they might have a good handle on it, but not be thinking about it when they came to testify, right? Like I'm sure Jessamine has lots to say about cybersecurity, but for example, it seems like this might be an area though that we might want to do a little bit more thinking about, and potentially it's benchmarking with other states and see what they may be doing or recommending.
And a really good area for more training.
Yeah. Okay, well, are there any other thoughts on this before we move to our final topic? Okay, well, let's move on to, I want to thank everybody first off for all of this discussion. I know that it's been a lot to kind of pull together, but I think it's going to be helpful as we embark on writing things, making sure that we were all kind of on the same page with what we were hearing and unearthing the key pieces has really been helpful to me. Susan?
Were we planning to talk about, like to do a recap of staffing as well, or?
We talked about staffing at the end of staffing, so I figured that was okay.
Ah, I see. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and moving forward, we'll do the recap as it happens. So like moving forward for new topics, if there's a report to be given, we could do that at the beginning. Then we hear the comments from the community, and then at the end, we reserve time to say, what did we hear today? This was sort of to process the backlog. Does that make sense for like how we would?
Yes, that makes perfect sense. And I see that in my notes now that I'm looking through it further. So perfect. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, so I was looking ahead to the future meetings, and we have 7 meetings scheduled. I had mentioned earlier, the one on November 17th, our report is due before that meeting. So one suggestion I have is that we pick a day to move, an earlier day for the November 17th meeting, so that time will be, so that meeting would be more useful to us. Having it afterward, I do think maybe we should all get together on the 17th and like have a party because our report's done, but I think we should try to move that meeting earlier and have it as a special meeting on a different day. What do you all think of that notion?
I like the notion, but it behove us to move it to some time when we're going to talk to an expert about the surveys. So move it to the near future as opposed to the distant future.
Yeah, that might be a good idea. What if we, well, here's an idea. What if we move it to, what if we added an October meeting with the thought that we can potentially meet with the survey person in October or November, one of those 2 months, and that we would do testimony and another topic on one of the other days. Just kind of front load it now. Because if we do it toward the end of the school year, everybody's going to be overwhelmed feeling. If we do it over the summer, it felt like that was a little bit clunky too. We know that we want to do the survey building soon, and we don't want to slow down other discovery that we do and other topics that we learn about. We know we probably don't want to do it in December because everybody will be having holiday overwhelmed feelings. So I would recommend either October or February. Those are my suggestions. What do you think?
I think the sooner the better.
Let me look at my calendar to make sure I'm not suggesting something that's not reasonable even for me.
And do you think you could have information from the survey specialists by October?
Not necessarily, but we could have another topic.
Yes.
We could have another topic by October potentially. But wait a second, now I'm looking at this. The department has a director's summit that we're sending out an invitation to, and that's coming up on the 20th and 21st. That was going to be hard. And we don't have to keep the pattern either. We could do a special meeting at any time. So we could do like an early December special meeting instead. So we've got November 18th as the next time. What would it be like to do December 16th? Would that be?
That's as late as I would push it because the following week's school breaks start on Wednesday and people will
Oh.
be disappearing rapidly.
Yeah.
December works for me.
Okay. Okay, let's, I think we can do a show of hands. I know that, not everybody can use all of the features, but I think you can all do a hand raise, right? So if December 16th works for you, put your hand reaction button up. Okay, this looks pretty good. 2, 3, okay. Let's do it. So this is going to be a special meeting on December 16th. Okay. So everybody, you can put your hands down again unless you have a question. So what I thought we could do is to look at the list of potential topics that we had talked about. And we have a couple more topics than we have days. And I guess there are two ways to think of this. One idea is that we can combine topics into a longer meeting. Another idea is that we could add additional meetings so that we get the topics in and that the department would do this, would pay for the stipends. We're not limited to only meet 12 times. It's just that the legislature only funded 12 meetings, if that makes any sense. And since the department's paying for the meetings anyway, I think we would just pay additional stipends. But I also know that it may be preferred to just kind of combine topics. So how about this? The first thing we could do is look at the list of topics and we can kind of do a gut check. Do these still sound like reasonable things to meet about? Does that make sense? And then we'll count up how many we have and we can try to slate them.
Sure.
Okay. So the first one, these are on page 4 of the agenda. We've got inclusive services, which I put the words library service to individuals with disabilities is how it's called out in the charge of the working group. So inclusive services and access to public programs and services. Those are two sort of related topics that could be grouped together, I think. And the difference between them is one is more around individuals with disabilities and one is more accessed by particular groups of Vermonters. And how accessible things seem to them from their vantage point and how accessible we've made things to them. So I think we could potentially group those two together into one session, one day. The next one is the role that libraries play in emergency preparedness. This one is something we're needing to look at per the charge. We've got to save some time in this, probably the summer, maybe the July, September meetings for the reports on the findings of the 2 surveys. There was a lot of interest in having something that's really specific to children, services to youth in school libraries and potentially also in public libraries. We also have a lot of talk so far about training needs and continuing education. And so it seems like it would be good to have Joy Warland come and talk about the work that she does and have Tanya Riles come and talk about the trustee training, and then also get some perspective on the certificate of public librarianship, the school media degree program at UVM, that kind of topic. And then the final one was library management and organization, because I hear people saying a lot that they want to know what other states do. And so that one seemed like that category kind of covered what do other states do. Do those topics, do they sound like the right topics? Are there topics that should be listed here that I didn't capture? It's so hard to lead a meeting with your circles. I can't see your faces and I'm wondering what you're thinking. Jeanette.
I was just going to say that the topic of the library's role in emergency preparedness ought to be a short topic if things needed to be combined to cut down on time. I mean, most towns have an emergency preparedness committee already. And, libraries can be a part of those. It's not that libraries would be the only source of emergency preparedness organizing. It's just a part of it.
Yeah, it's
I would agree.
interesting. Susan.
Sorry.
That's
I would
okay.
agree with Jeanette on that. And I would also say the continuing ed and professional development piece was covered to some extent under the staffing piece. So that might not take a whole day as well. There's always more to say on that, but I think we've kind of explored that topic already.
Yeah, I think the part that for me is, and maybe this is just because I haven't gone through the certificate of public librarianship program, maybe folks in this call have more familiarity with it than I do, but just kind of getting the breadth of what the offerings are now. And thinking about one of the things that that is interesting, I think, is how specialized for Vermont our educational opportunities are. Like if you go to UVM for the school media program and then you try to leave and become a school librarian elsewhere, it's not an ALA accredited program. So is it portable? Is the degree portable? And it's the same with the certificate of public librarianship. It's like the states that give out that do the certificate trainings, it's not necessarily a portable training. And I think calling this out in some way is looking at not just, oh, we need more training in this area. I mean, some of the things I've heard today that we need more training in, I know we're doing training in. It's just people may not realize we're doing those trainings. So then it's like, is it an awareness of the training? Is it, I'm just.
Yeah, there's lots to be said about how Vermont fits into continuing education and how we bring new librarians into the profession, because there's lots of improvements that could be made there, certainly.
Yeah. I'd also like to hear from some of the other folks. Like I would be really curious to have someone from the UVM school media degree program come and share with us about the program, just so that we understand it and how did it evolve and what did it take to get it, and could UVM have a library school program for public librarians? Like what would that take?
From
And would it
personal
be
experience,
ALA certified?
I did go and get my certification, my library certification, I don't know, back in 2000 and something. But now I'm actually taking my Master of Library Science, because what I want to do next, I can't do without the library science degree. And I couldn't do it up at UVM because it wasn't an accredited course. So I had to go and look elsewhere. It seems a shame that I should take my money and my time and put it into a different state completely. It would be much better to keep everything local if you can.
Karen?
Yeah, this is just, seconding what Wendy just said. The school library sort of endorsement path at UVM is fine, but it's not a, ALA certified degree path. And unfortunately, the Agency of Education, the school library media endorsement, they're extremely picky. So if you have an ALA MLS, like I do from another state, when you come to Vermont, the AOE, I had to take like 9 additional classes at UVM in order to get my Vermont state to add the endorsement to my teaching license, even though I already had an ALA MLS. And so it's a very weird, it's silly.
You just cut off my backup plan. My backup plan just dissolved, Karen.
Whoa. Yeah,
You're
that's
telling
crazy.
me that my Rutgers University media specialist degree doesn't count here?
Well, it can. So the trick, and this was like some years ago, so they may be different now. But when I was adding the endorsement, so I already had a teaching license in Vermont, and I just needed to add my library endorsement. And I had my ALA MLS from the University of Michigan, but their course descriptions do not match UVM's school media path course descriptions exactly. So like when the AOE looks at the course description and says, well, you need stuff on this. And it's like, well, I took a class in that, but it doesn't say exactly the same thing. They're like, nope, unless it says exactly the same thing, you're out of luck. So then you have to redo a bunch of coursework. It's ridiculous. So
moly.
Yeah, anyway, but having some paths I would love to have some in-state paths for people to get to an ALA MLS. I don't know if UVM is the place that's willing to like add that. I mean, that would be a big ask for them to add a whole other program, but it would be nice to have an in-state option.
Sounds like you needed an advocate in the Agency of Education who really understood libraries and the school library media profession.
That would have also been great. The AOE can be difficult for sure. And I'm hoping it's better now than it was then.
I did it in 2006 and it sure wasn't easy then. But I did it through
Alright.
transcript review. It was, yeah. I didn't do
Oh,
anything.
yeah.
VM.
Yeah.
Andy?
I just wanted to put out there that if this is something that people wanted to advocate for, the EVM probably isn't the ideal place, but state universities might be. You know, just the thought.
And the thing is too, you know, it's sort of like the building situation. We don't need to, the working group doesn't need to necessarily solve the problem. We just need to identify things that we would love to see, like an in-state path to a degree might be nice.
It would be just to see not all the money going to Simmons. No offense to Simmons, but you know, it's be great if that people can get trained here.
So it sounds like, I mean, did these topics sound okay as far as like what we do next? And if so, do you have any ideas about what order we do them in? Obviously, whenever we can get the consultant for the surveys, we'll want to schedule that in quickly. If that's the November, I'm thinking it might be the November meeting. So let's just tentatively say surveys. Consultant. We could in November do the survey consultant and then also get one or two of the reports from the past topics. For example, on programming and collections. Let's see, the November 16th special meeting. You want to try to do the continuing education topic then? Does that sound okay to folks? I can see Wendy, so she's nodding. So I'm just going to go with Wendy.
You meant December 16th, right?
What did I say? Sorry, December 16th, 2022, the meeting that we're doing instead of what we had originally planned for November 17th. The December 16th meeting, we could do that one on the topic of continuing education.
I suspect December will be harder to get public testimony for. So we might want to think about, are there professionals that we want to be hearing from anyway for that one and reach out to
Yeah.
them?
I'm thinking that we can try to like bring in the various experts in our team with both Tanya and Joy for kind of framing it. And then hopefully get somebody from the UVM program.
It's a plan.
Okay. So then the next one after that would be January 27. We could do inclusive services and access together on that day. Karen, is Karen Gravlin here?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Are you around on that day, Karen, before I book you?
Yes, yeah, I'll be around.
Okay. Great. And she knew that was coming, so that's not, I'm not startling people that badly. Don't worry, folks. So, and that one is another topic that Karen, we've talked about a little bit, but we'll try to line up some folks who have, some experience in this area and some folks from the community. And if any of you have folks in your community who you know really, would be great on this topic of inclusive services and also on access, just let me and Karen know and we can try to get them scheduled into. Let's see. This is that. Education. So the topic of youth and children in school and public libraries, is that a topic that we'd like to hear about? It's sort of been weaving its way through this whole time with testimony from school librarians throughout and testimony from children's librarians. So I think we would want to really focus on what is it that we are trying to hear about specifically if we schedule this for its own, for a full day. Andy?
I mean, I suppose on that topic, the thing I'm personally most interested in is what I describe as the social service role libraries are filling around childcare.
We could also do more of a deep dive around early childhood education and the role of the public library in the early childhood literacy realm. Potentially. Those are both kind of public library topics. Andy?
Sorry, this is a distraction maybe. But along the road of emergency preparedness, even more broadly talking about libraries and social services in some capacity. You know, I don't know if others are interested or see that important, but it's at the Brownell, it's like fundamental, you know, to what they deal with.
What?
And
Well, we could reframe the whole thing. Like maybe we could do the social services topic as a day that includes both the emergency preparedness and it could include that kind of the emergency babysitter, childcare.
de facto after school program.
And then also hear from libraries that are really doing a lot to link people with social services in terms of housing or rehabilitation around substance abuse.
Mental health care.
So mental health. I'm making all these notes so that I can hopefully try to frame it properly later on. So mental health, substance abuse.
And harm reduction in regard to substance abuse too.
I've been seeing when I visit libraries, when I was visiting libraries in the Northeast Kingdom on a Friday, I came across people from the Department of Labor at the library. And like every Friday they go out to the library instead of sitting in their offices, they go out. And then somebody in a different county was saying, oh, they come here on Tuesdays. So that's another one too, Department of Labor. So thinking about that makes some sense. Okay, so that could be March. And then the library management and organization, we could potentially bring people from other state libraries to share out about their structure, and how they support libraries in their states, or how their organization, statewide structures are built up. You know, we've talked a lot about how very flat we are here in Vermont, with kind of the Department of Libraries doing some granting of funds and some centralized activities, and then everything being like each library for itself. It's funny, I was talking with a librarian recently, and I was at the Solomon Wright Public Library, and I had this thought come to me, and it's actually kind of interesting as I was talking with her, because it's on the one hand, the lack of county structures, like, I think sometimes it feels like it's a flaw or a deficit, but something that's really great is that we're all communicating with each other directly. The communications aren't like funneled and fragmented, and we're not playing phone tag so much. It's just, you want to talk to somebody at the Department of Libraries, you call them. Like, each library engages directly with us and engages directly with each other. There's working in New Jersey or in California, I never even thought about the state library. Like, I never would have, as a librarian, called anybody and talked to them. That would have been pretty weird. I think I did once, and that was because I was doing Josh's kind of role with survey data. But do you all want to, is that just something that's interesting to me because I'm the type of person who wants to be a state librarian, or is that of interest to you all?
I
Do you
think that's a huge interest, and I also think it's really key in terms of understanding Vermont libraries and our needs.
Okay. So let's try to get something in May then on the structures and organizations. And then thinking we would probably be hearing the reports at some point in the summer. And then we could always throw additional things onto the schedule for open meetings that are like, you know, somebody, if a bunch of us wanted to work on some writing together, we can always toss that on the schedule. If we want to share something that's been formulated in the report. I do think we're going to have to work into upcoming meetings, some review of draft summaries. An idea that I think could work is that we kind of have an executive summary on each of the topics we've heard about that just gets kind of put into the binder that is the report. Does that make some sense? So on certain days, we might be hearing primarily on this topic, but you might see that a document has arrived in your inbox, and then you'll read it and give feedback on it. Also at that same meeting.
I think that sounds good.
Okay. Do you feel like we kind of have a path? There's a lot of work to be done. I don't want to sound overwhelmed or anything, but there's a lot that we still need to do. And I think we can do it, but we've got to buckle down. Get serious. We've been pretty buckled already. I think we're doing great. So we'll keep at it.
And Kathy, you've been making pleas for more volunteer writers, and I just want to put out there that I will help
Oh,
with
good.
writing, but we should probably talk offline about what makes the most sense.
Yeah. I have all these great intentions to write all of this stuff, and then like the reality of there are 24 hours in my day. And at some point I do need to sleep. That hits every once in a while.
Yeah, you should only be working for 8 of them.
Oh, Christopher, you're so
I know, I'm so cute. I know exactly what it's like.
Well, I
But
appreciate and we'll definitely take you up on your offer, and I'll connect with you about that. Anybody else who wants to help with stuff? Please let me know.
I'm writing an email right now.
Uh-oh.
I'm sending
Well-
an email.
Right.
Are there
Oh,
any
yeah.
other topics you all think we should cover that we haven't outlined here? I actually, to get that bulleted list, I went through like line by line and tried to map out what we had done already and kind of phrase them in ways that our brains could digest them. But I think I've got everything that was in the charge someplace in there. And I think by not scheduling anything right now for July and September, we'll probably be doing the survey results and the kind of reviewing what has been written and refining it and doing more this type of meeting, not on new topics. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Are you all feeling like we've done our work today and we could adjourn? Because I'm kind of getting that impression.
Yes.
Okay. Well, in that case, it is now 2:35 p.m. and our meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. Thank you for your commitment to this work. I know it has been a lot of processing today. So pat yourself on the back, make yourself a cup of tea or cocoa or hot cider or something and relax. Have a good weekend, and thank you all for your time.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Kathy.
Hi.
To everybody in
Bye.
the department.
Bye all.